Hi, I'm DJ Ware. On this episode of the CyberGizmo, I'm going to be taking a look at ClearLinux, but this time the server. I want to see if it's a good replacement for CentOS. Stay tuned right after this. Yeah, so I got this idea thinking maybe ClearLinux server might be a good implementation. So one of the things that I wanted to take a look at today was some of the changes that have taken place since the last time I reviewed this in February of last year. So yeah, I want to see what kind of improvements they've made. Maybe kick the tires on it a little bit, get it installed under a VM because that's a good starting place. If you're what I really want to try to build out here is a Kubernetes cluster based on ClearLinux and see how that works. So I'm going to start with a VM, and then I'll start to put my Kubernetes clusters together on one or more VMs. Obviously, it'll be more than one. But yeah, so what kinds of things have they been doing? So I guess the first thing is you can see that I don't know if you saw the earlier reviews of ClearLinux, but the first one was that pretty much everything was only in a few bundles. A bundle is a collection of packages. A bundle isn't really a package. It's just a collection of stuff that is related that gets installed onto the system. I guess probably for those of you that aren't familiar with ClearLinux, let's go back to the beginning here and talk about it a little bit. So Intel is the major contributor to ClearLinux. It is a place where they are trying to create a very highly tuned platform for Intel machines. And of course, AMD does work in this space as well, and they work quite well, by the way. But it's really to optimize across the entire stack. They want it secure, and it's really meant to go from the cloud all the way down to the individual devices that are accessing the system, and then in between the edge and the fog and all that stuff. But they want to employ a stateless concept here in that there's a strict separation between the user and the system files that allows for easier manageability. Now, in typical Linux distributions, I'm not pointing fingers and saying this is a bad thing, but if you look at typical Linux distributions, I think they have, it's right here. System files, user data is just like it's everywhere. It's just a big mess. At one time, Unix was pretty well organized. I mean, they had things like user data was separated, was under var user, and then it had your name or var home. And then there was operating system was pretty much relegated to the system areas of the file system, and then the system configurations were confined generally to etc. However, over time, that has kind of turned into a big mess. I mean, all three of those components are kind of scattered all over most distributions' disk. So Intel wanted to kind of reorganize it, put it back into boxes so that, if you were making a change, you knew where to go, which is always kind of helpful, right? And then finally, they wanted to create some automated development tools, which allows you to build this operating system more efficiently than in the past. And what's kind of interesting is that some of those development tools have kind of spilled over into application development. So at least that's my opinion that has happened. I don't know that for a fact, but I can see that they're out there. I mean, if there's something that has been developed that works, why not use it? So yeah. The optimizations that Intel has done to the system has been to optimize the compilers to eke out as much performance out of those as possible. But they've done more. They've went into the kernel, and they have done a lot of tuning on the kernel to make it appropriate for workloads that would be in a developer space. Originally, ClearLinux was for developers, and then the workstation would be the developing platform that would then push changes up to a test server, and then up to your production servers for mainly cloud. So, but that kind of has gone away. It is more of a general purpose operating system now, as they have started to collect more and more packages into the bundles. The other thing about security is that it's constantly doing vulnerability scanning. And they do have an aggressive mitigation policy, quite rightly so, given the fact where we've come from with some of the Intel processors over the past few years. And they have a unified trust store. It's a common place to store certificates. And then a lot of the same kind of features you'll find in a lot of distributions, industry standards, things like SSH, OpenSSL, IPsec, VPNs, and the signed updates and signed consent, all that kind of stuff. But one of the other big changes over a normal distro is efficiency in the updating process. As you'll see today, how quick ClearLinux is in doing updates, it's because it's a similar model to some of the more higher end systems where they only pass deltas. And and also so it's kind of called incremental proportional updates. So you only are changing a portion of the package that changes, and then writing those changes out to disk. So it just takes a lot less time rather than make a complete copy of the file over and over again. So the Mixer tool, that tool allows you to create your own bundles, basically. So you take your applications, you can put in whatever else your package is dependent upon, mix those together, and create a bundle out of it that is then deployed completely down onto the system. That's not a container. It's actually deploying your app along with all the supporting things that it needs. So we can go through a lot more of this, but I think the main thing that we really need to look at here is some of the changes that have taken place over the years. So let's go to the blog, and let's go all the way down here. So I did this in February. I don't think I mentioned this, but they're now a certified Kubernetes distribution. So it basically means that they're certified, that they're conformant with a particular version of Kubernetes. And then I guess in March they added some other stuff on to allow for improving the performance of Python's NumPy. Now, if you're doing a lot of advanced mathematics, NumPy is pretty popular in the Python circles for doing that, I believe. There's also the database reference stack, and currently I think, so basically this is Intel's look at how to try to improve the performance of databases. And if you've ever done any tuning with databases, you know that they're tricky. And a lot of times you end up having to tune a lot of things, like inside the tables and the indexes and the size of those tables. This is talking about typical SQL databases. But you also run into things like having to tune the kernel to offer more buffering areas and more areas to read, to make it more efficient to read from memory than it is to go out and try to retrieve the data from disk each time. So Intel has the standard called the database reference stack, and this is in their second incarnation of it. And it's really trying to deliver further refinements and expand its uses. So they're using Optane PMEM to try to help accelerate access and retrieval of data from databases. So they don't specify what kind of databases they are, but currently there are only a couple of frameworks or operating systems that support it, and one of those is CentOS. And so I thought, if CentOS is going away, then that leaves ClearLinux as the only one that's going to be still standing in supporting this. I think, I'm not sure, but I would imagine some of the areas of Red Hat would also do this because they also pick up some of the changes from CentOS, but I'm not sure, and I don't see them here, so I have to assume that for whatever reason, maybe they're just not a part of it, or maybe it's just not mentioned. but they talk about the the databases that they're trying to help provide data from, and Memcache doesn't require a storage engine because it implements its own memory allocation called slab. So so Memcache is what they're talking about here. And basically, you can read about this yourself, but it's just one of the changes they've made. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on it. The other one is the Deep Learning Reference Stack, version 6. And of course, today, deep learning and artificial intelligence, the rest of the artificial intelligence stack is primarily where all the new development is going. You have TensorFlow, which of course is part of the machine learning capabilities. Most of this is trying to transfer the execution of that off of the CPU onto the GPU. So that is because of the gains in performance that you get from doing that. And there's a lot of different things here about it as well. So, and then containerized Go applications, and of course, this is using the advanced vector extensions 512 from which are available on the newer Intel processors. Don't know if I've heard conflicting stories that I don't know if AMD supports AVE extensions yet for 512 or not. Just don't know. I would imagine their newer processors do. I just don't know that. So, but AVX is the new standards, and of course that's being used to help accelerate things. And of course, there's been major improvements to the GNU GCC compiler for 10.1. So, yeah, I mean, it is a developer release focused. But I don't want you to leave you with the intention that, hey, this is only for development, because it certainly is not. It is a general purpose one. So let's go and look at some of the software to prove that fact. So, I mean, yeah, you have data science, and of course that is going to be used in some of the storage pools in which the artificial intelligence engines will be running against to learn about us. Most of that data is us, right? Developer tools. There's stuff about education, and before in the ClearLinux bundles, a lot of these things were packaged into one big bundle, and then you just plop the whole thing down at once. Well, that's adding a lot of stuff to your system that maybe you just weren't interested in games and multimedia graphics. Now, this typically won't be something that's used in development unless it's on the front end. If it's in the front end of the processor or whatever, and you're designing the UI that goes into it. But things like audio and so forth. Maybe if the machine learning is trying to learn your voice in order to be able to do functions, I suppose. But most of this would be used to develop content, right? Productivity. So these would be things like Ansible, and they have ABI Word. Also, I think LibreOffice would fit into this as well. Then you have your programming languages, of course. There's so much stuff. I mean, I'm looking at pages and pages of stuff in these directories. Security. The security tools are okay, but they're just kind of, I would say, more server focused and more basic kind of things. I suppose some of them, like KeePass XC, would be good on a desktop. But Dovecot, of course, this is used for mail servers to protect POP, POP3 and IMAP servers. So, that's what that's used for. But it's meant to encrypt it. But you still can't encrypt all of the message. And then they got a miscellaneous category where they kind of lump everything else, like amateur radio, Android Studio, that kind of stuff. So I think the releases really come a long way. They seem to be working a lot. And I know Intel isn't the only ones working on this. There's a lot of third-party developers that are also, bringing their code base into either the bundles, or they're building it as Flatpaks. So to go into it, which ClearLinux supports both of those. Let's go to the downloads here. So we have ClearLinux OS Desktop, which I've done before. It's a GUI, and then you have the OS server. Now, one of the things is about installing the OS Desktop is it will check, and it's looking for hardware. If you put it on, now, I don't know if it complains bitterly about it being under a VM, because I have installed it under a VM before, and I did get it to work. But I had to modify quite a bit of the parameters on it to make more of the underlying hardware visible to the operating system to make it work. And then same with Linux OS Server. All these are bare metal installs. However, there is a way to install it on virtual machines, and they have instructions here, and it depends upon which one you want. They support a Hyper-V, KVM, Parallels, Proxmox, Virt Manager, VirtualBox, VMware Workstation Player, VMware ESXi are all supported. And then they also support deploying it to a cloud. So you can deploy it in Amazon, Azure, DigitalOcean. All these are able to do that as well. Don't see Linode or any of those players mentioned by name, but I suppose there are probably ways to do that, even with those kind of hosting facilities as well. I wouldn't imagine that it would be all that different. So the ones I'm really interested in today are the Proxmox install, and so that is what I'm going to do right now. Is I've already got it downloaded, and the thing I downloaded was ClearLinux Server. And so what I want to do right now is go ahead and put it up on Proxmox. So that's what we're going to do. And so I have my system set up here. I don't need anything else here. That's all fine. I need to define that this is coming from the NAS. And there's my 3400. That's the same one that's currently on their site, at least at the time I'm doing this video. Now, you can use Spice if you want, so that's what we're going to do. One of the things, though, we will have to change, not that, is this. We'll have to change that to UEFI, and this, of course, is required, so we're going to put that on local VM. I also have to change the machine to Q35. And that is all in the documentation from Intel. So it's not trial and error. If you read their docs, that's exactly what it says to do. The next step here is to place my hard drive. We're also going to do local VM there as well. The only other thing I think to do with this, I'm looking, no default, no other changes here. So we will move on to the CPU. Now this one does need some changes. So the type here is host. So I got to scroll all the way down and find that host. And then I'll want to scroll all the way down here. AES, I need to have that acceleration turned on for ClearLinux because it does use it. I don't think I need anything else. So memory, I'll leave it at 2048. It won't come anywhere near that. But yeah, and the Ethernet, we want to make sure it's Intel E1000. And again, this is all suggestions from them, from Intel. So just look overview, just make sure that everything is okay. That looks good, looks good, looks good. Yep, all looks good. So we'll go ahead and finish and let it build out. And it should be done. We'll go ahead and start it, and I'll open up my Spice window. Now I could, it's going to go ahead and boot on its own, but I could have gone through and actually verified the thing. And this always gets me about ClearLinux. You know, on most distributions, you're kind of waiting for things to load up. It's done. I mean, it has a message here that makes it look like, am I still waiting on it? No, you're not. It's just this has got covered up a little bit by the message. So log in as root. You'll want to create a new temporary password, of course, because you're going to end up overwriting this. That's it. So the next step we'll need to do is the clear installer. And if you remember my first video that I did on ClearLinux, This should look familiar. So you use your arrow keys to navigate around. Now, if you want UTC time, then you're good to go, but I don't. I want to use local time, so I'm going to have to scroll all the way back up here to America. So just wait to get up to the top. There is not a search. I tried to do a shortcut to get to Chicago, and nothing happened. So, but we've got it. So we'll click on that, and the next thing it wants is we want to check, make sure that all these others are right too. So yeah, it's American English is for my language, and then keyboard US, of course. And then I need to specify where to install the media. Now, safe install would be doing a side-by-side install within an existing operating system. I don't have that. This is on a VM, so we're not going to do that. We're going to do destructive. Advanced installation, if you want to go through and configure the actual partition the way you want it, you can do that. And then, yeah, and that's all you have to do. I'll come down here. If you want to enable encryption, you can do that. I'm not going to. I am going to confirm this, but if you do want to partition it, just keep hitting tab until, well, I guess it's not lit up right now because I don't have the advanced turned on. So we'll go ahead and confirm that. And then the next thing it's asking me to do is to add a user. So we can do that. We'll leave the administrator flag on and we'll confirm it twice. So if you want to add more users, you can do that. It's basically telemetry. This is always a point of contention. They keep reiterating that the only thing this is used for is to tell the devs there's a problem. But I noticed that now they're saying that the usage statistics is for continuous improvement. Relate to operating system defaults. No personally. Yeah, right. No. Yeah, I've heard that before. Nothing. Okay, so at this point I could install, but I'm going to go over to advanced users, advanced options here, and look at that. So again, you can, this is set up on DHCP by default, but you can go ahead and change it if you want to a static IP address. And most servers you probably would. I'm not going to do that today. I mean, I can easily change that at any time. Yeah, this probably would be a really good thing to do. Let's make sure to actually have network connectivity before we start this thing. Okay, so all checks are good. I can select additional bundles if I want to. So let's go look and see what choices we have. Cloud control, containers, desktop apps. No, probably won't be doing that. Dev utilities. Yeah, probably will want those. Popular editors. Does that mean like Nano, or I would think VI would be there already. OS clear on clear runs any ClearLinux dev process. Okay. Pigeon, Python, basic, sysadmin basic, user basic dev. I'll probably want that. They have larger development packages which have basically to dump everything. So if you're doing kernel development or device driver development, you'll get all those things as well. And there's multiple language support in those as well. So, or you can, now you can kind of pick, like you see Go Basic is up there, Java Basic. So you can pick individual languages, or you can use larger bundles that have all of those in it if you do multi-language development. Okay, so I think we're good to go. And now it's saying confirm that this is really what you want to have it how you want it laid out. So it's going to create two new partitions. One for, I assume, will be for the UEFI partition, and the second one will be for root. So that's it. And I'll go ahead and get started. At this point, I don't have to do anything until it comes back. This doesn't take a whole lot of time to do. Of course, I asked for a whole bunch of I did ask for some additional packages, so I think I will come back. It is, let's see, I got to figure out what time it is because looks like it's about 3:22. So I'll come back in a little bit. So the time is about, let's see, 3:38, so 3:22, so that's about 16 minutes. I must have installed the bigger packages because that took quite a while. I'm going to go ahead and reboot this. So yeah, don't have a login prompt yet. There it is. And I did not give the host a name. So if you ever see this clear with a number after it, that means you need to assign a host name. Otherwise, it will just pick one at random. I think that some portion... anyway, I'm not sure how they generate it. I'm not even going to guess. But I will go ahead and sign in. Okay, so I am signed in. And if you want to know how to figure out what bundles you have, on your documentation page, there's a reference section here about, and then you can just go around. If you want to know the compatible hardware that works, you can go there. If you want to know more about the bundles list, you can go here. And you can see that they have, this is quite different than the times that I had reviewed this before. They have really started to make this more granular. So you're not having to install everything to make something work. So yeah, and there's a ton of bundles now that you can deploy, but that's not what we really need to do right now. So let's go back to here and we'll get started with this. Let's make sure that sudo is here. Yeah, it looks like it. Yep. Okay. So the next thing I want to do is I should have Git. At least I would hope so. So we'll do a clone. I want to bring down Linus, of course. We'll go ahead and get that. And Linus, of course, wants everything to be owned by root. We'll go ahead and run it. If you don't run it, it will run as a user, but you just won't get a complete picture of the security of your system, of course, because there's some files that can't open. Just trying to see what the baseline is. 69 is what I get right now. So I'm probably missing, well, I would have to do more on this to find out. So let me just output that to, yeah, I will just call it out. That's fine. We'll just drive all that output there. And we'll just rerun it again real quick. I always forget that I am not under SSH, so I can't just scroll back. All right, so let's do a more on out. Now we can scroll forward and back. Okay, let's see what we got here. Mount points, typical. I'm just going to go down to the end. So we've got some errors in the group files. Okay. And the rest are just suggestions. It's not even complaining that I don't have a firewall installed. PAM configuration, that's the same as I always get. Yeah, the Mod Pro, they need a blacklist for the ones that are USB and FireWire devices, of course. RPM, check that RPM does not reveal any packages. Okay, that's new. I haven't seen that one before. Audit tool, yeah. Those need to be turned off. We need some way to collect, yeah, sysdat, audit D, blah, blah, blah. And, okay. So, not surprising, but not bad. I mean, it's not bad at all. Now, I believe, since let me get out of this directory. Yeah, OpenSSH is installed already, but it's disabled. And this is one of those areas where you will have to go and configure. So you'll want to drop your config files into the etc SSH directory because it doesn't do that for you. It will, of course, generate the keys when the service comes up. But yeah, you'll need to have an SSHD config. If you're going to use it as a client, you're probably going to want an SSH config as well. So you'll need to drag those in from your, however you want yours configured, or just configure them on here. I'm not going to do that today, but let's go look at a few other things. Now I've been running this for a bit. 73 meg. It was at about 61 meg when I did this initially without installing any packages on it. So I haven't done any updating yet. We'll do that in a minute. So it's fairly light. Like I said, it isn't going to take anywhere near that 2 gig at the moment, but later on it will. And then now with all my stuff I put on, I know that this was around, trying to think, it was around 6.1 gig. Now it's up to 20. So I have put a lot of stuff on here. So I'll probably go back and I'll probably create a development area, or I'll expand that drive out, because 11 gig disk, it's close. I don't like to run my file systems above 70%. That is a good way to, especially with SSDs, and this has an SSD under it. I don't really want to do that. So I will expand that out a bit. But yeah, it's taken quite a bit. But it did push a whole bunch of packages on there. Like, I bet I have AutoGen. Yep, I have AutoGen. I probably have Make. Probably have LD. Let's just see. What did it give me? Oh my. Everything but the kitchen sink. Yeah, Ceph is even on here. So, Clang, or C-Lang if you prefer. I just like calling it Clang. All the DBI stuff is on here. Yeah. There's a lot of stuff. Okay, so that's good. I guess the only thing is missing is probably that. Oh, no, even that's here. So this is running it on an Intel Core i7 10710U, which of course is a NUC. And the base frequency, they always get wrong. It's 1.6. No, it's 2.4. I don't know why they always get that wrong. It does not run at 1.6. It runs at 2.4. It goes upward to 3.6. But I don't know where that comes from. Maybe there's like an idle state when there's nothing going on. It drops way down or something into a power saving mode. But anyway, so what did I really want to tell you that I want to do here? What is the purpose of all this? So what I want to do is to see how well this will work as a replacement for my CentOS system. I also want to bring up Kubernetes on it and see how well that works as well. I mean, I see Ansible's there. I also could try replacing the Ansible system as well. That does all my updating on all the servers here. So I might try to bring that over and see how that works. Let's see. I also do a lot of compiling, and I also have a repository. I'll probably bring that over as well. Proxmox does not currently have any ZFS file system under it. So either I could install this OpenZFS under it, and of course it has its own, but it's the older version. I'm not sure when they'll actually get around to doing anything like that. But I guess one thing I should go back and show you, though, is how to update. The utility is swapd. Now I can just do auto update as one word. And that will enable auto updates to occur automatically. So you don't have to do anything. It'll just go ahead in the background and take care of those periodically. Or if you want to, let's see. Oh, I am running this. We don't need to do that. So let's do a swapd update. And then it'll pull whatever the latest set of packages are and bring them down and start to update. So you can do it either let it auto update or you can do it yourself. I think these come out 4 times a week. Yeah, I think it is pretty, you probably won't want to do this in a production environment, having it update quite that much. Yeah, there's quite a few packages that it is going to update. So yeah, I don't think I want to watch all that, but I'll go back over here. Anyway, that's all I had today. So I'm going to evaluate this and see how good a replacement this is. I'll probably evaluate some others. One thing I was going to add on is I went out to CERN is a pretty heavy user of CentOS. And Fermi is too. In fact, Fermi has their own distribution called Scientific Linux. And there also used to be a Fermi Linux at one time, and both of those were, I think the difference was the Scientific Linux that was available to anyone outside of Fermi, and of course Fermi Linux was something specific for users of the Fermi Lab. But at least I think that was the case. I know that I have seen Fermi Lab available publicly before, but I think it's still missing some of the the internal stuff that they give out. CERN does the same thing. They have a in-house version of CERN Linux, and they also have one that they provide as open source to the public. So, but I noticed that on CERN's page they have a roadmap that talks about what versions they're going to be using of CentOS, and 8 looks like they went in recently and updated it, and it now says Rocky Linux. And of course, as one of the, I forget which one of my subscribers who was watching the videos on CentOS was so kind to point out that one of the founders of CentOS is going to fork Red Hat's binary packages, and he says a bug for bug compatibility with Red Hat. Yeah, I guess that's kind of what it's come to now. Is instead of being feature for feature, now it's bug for bug. But he is going to work on Rocky Linux, which will be a replacement for CentOS. So I noticed that CERN has already adopted it. So sight unseen, CERN is coming for you. Anyway, that's all I had for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, as always, please like and subscribe. Hope to see you in the next video, and bye for now.